Well, welcome to another episode of the Revolution Leadership Podcast. Today, I am super excited to be interviewing Mr. Danny Harvey. I graduated from Charis Bible College with Danny. We went to school together, and he's an awesome friend. He is, well, I'll let you hear where he's from. Definitely down south in the South area. But he's an amazing man, and he's going to talk to us a little bit today about leadership principles that he's learned throughout his life. And yeah, Danny, it's a pleasure to have you here on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited. We've been friends for a while now. I mean, it
Yeah.
feels like we've been friends for a lifetime.
Yeah.
But
sure.
if I actually if we actually think about it, we've actually probably only been friends for the last 3 years, something like that.
Maybe
but
three,
we've been known each other for a while now. Actually, I knew your parents,
Right.
and they said you should get to know Chris. And after we did that, it's been great.
Yeah, thanks,
It's been a
Mom
great
and Dad.
relationship.
Appreciate it. Yeah. So Danny, where are you from?
Texas.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking.
Clearly.
Yeah, I'm from England originally, from the UK. Grew up there, and I moved out to the United States in 2016. Actually, permanently in November. I came out in about March, April, something like that.
Mhm.
And then I might have some family out here that were attending Charis Bible College before me, and then they got to know who is now my wife. They got to know her and her family very well, and I came out here and had just an amazing encounter with the Lord. And he, I wouldn't say he spoke to me for the first time. He speaks to you always, but I was listening for the first time. And he really downloaded some amazing things, and I, met my future wife there, and it was just amazing. So after 4 years, we're married, we work here, and it's just, fantastic the way that the journey has been. My wife and I work together. What we do for a living is I'm a venue manager at a wedding venue in Colorado, and we're branching out now, and we're getting very excited about that to move into more executive roles. But we're the boots on the ground, as we say, to try kind of give those people the special day, and which is a very important part of their lives. It was an important part of ours, and important part of everybody's life. But for what I would call as a Christian, my calling would be more to defend the Christian faith, which is just a fancy way of saying that is apologetics. Just to defend the faith, teach Christians how to defend their faith, talk to atheists, agnostics, Muslims, Jews, whoever can talk to us, whoever wants to talk to us, and just be able to have that platform there to talk about that. So that's my calling there. I'm currently studying at Luther Rice College and Seminary, which is online, doing my bachelor's in religion and the Christian worldview, and I want to go on to more graduate study as we go on, and just continue learning. I always love to learn. And currently in the planning stage of launching my online platform, Grace and Truth Apologetics, which is going to be very fun. And it's going to have basically going to be more on a YouTube platform, and it's going to have an online platform on websites and all that sort of stuff as well. And it's going to try and create a safe environment for Christians to come and learn what it means to have a relationship with the Lord, how that is on a firm foundation, because it is true, and there is reasons why God exists, why Jesus actually rose from the dead, not just you don't just take the word for it, but why is that word true, and really dive into defending that and teaching people how to do that. But also then allowing other people to come and share their views, why they think the resurrection is a hoax, why they think God doesn't exist, and come and, let's listen to your argument, but let's present our argument together and actually learn and try and convince them and debate with them in a gentle and respectful way why what we believe is true. Anyway, so that's a short synopsis of what I'm doing, what we're doing, and how we're progressing, and it's very exciting.
Cool. I love it. Well, I think you're going to be meeting a need for sure. Just generally right now, teaching people how to respectfully debate, how to flesh out ideas in a way that's helpful and healthy. It sounds like that's a big passion of yours, and mine as well. So I'm excited to see that launch.
Yeah, I'm excited.
And when it does, I'm sure by the time we air this episode, it may be launched. We're not sure.
Yep.
But either way, I'll include that in the show notes.
Great.
So people can get a hold of you and see all of that when it's up and running.
Awesome.
So
Sounds great.
good. Well, I would love, Danny, if you had a couple stories pertaining to leadership, either, you know, from people that you've heard from or maybe that you've experienced in your own life, that you've learned from. I'd love to hear from you because I know that your background is pretty extensive and you got some cool experiences. So
politics was a main thing for me before I came out to the United States. I still try and get involved in politics to a certain extent. I try and stay out of it a little bit now, just the way it is right now. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be interactive with it, but just the boots on the ground. I think I'm not so much there as I was back in England. I was a member of the UK Independence Party, which was leading the way for Brexit.
Okay.
And I stood for public office in 2018. Was it 2018? I think it was 2018. I was 18 at least when I stood. I was one of the youngest. I was one of the youngest candidates to stand. It was only in the local offices. It wasn't like the one of the national ones, but I stood for that.
Cool.
And it was 2015. Because I was out here. Yeah, I was 18. It was in 2015. Because then in 2016 we had the EU referendum.
Got it.
And I led the way in that area. We had a couple of Leave organisations around, and I stepped up and I led one of the local branches of that organisation. So I was there organising the meetings and trying to lead campaign days. You know, we had in the area that I lived in England, we had 3 different areas that were under one area. It was called Torbay, and we had Torquay, Paynton and Brixham. They were all under Torbay. So we had almost 3 teams going to those 3 areas with stalls in the town centres, talking to people why we believe what we believe, trying to convince people to vote Leave in the referendum. We were in a pretty high Leave area.
Okay.
It's always been an achievement of mine that we achieved the highest Leave vote in the entire southwest of England, which is a great achievement.
Cool.
But in the leadership side of that, it was trying to allow room for everybody with different opinions to speak, because it wasn't just a political question. We had people from all different parties, from right wing, left wing. We had Conservatives. We had those who were in UK Independence Party or UKIP. We had the Labour Party, which is more of the left wing. We had Socialists who were Leavers or Brexiteers or however you want to call them. And it was trying to find that common ground, trying to, okay, you may think that the welfare state needs to be fully funded by the government. You think that you should cut as many government regulations as possible and allow the market to flow. But we have to come together and debate and campaign for Brexit together. There were many times in different meetings that I led and held that it was like, well, I don't know if I can work with the Conservative. I don't know if I could work with the Labour Party. And it had to be the point where we all believe that the European Union is becoming too centralised. It's becoming far too controlling. So allow us to come together and agree that it's too controlling, and then we can debate our differences.
Yeah.
We need to come to a place of agreement, and then we can discuss whether we believe that the country should be run this way or the country should be run that way. The common ground is that we both love our country, we both think it should be run independently, but we disagree on whether it should be run independently this way or this way.
Sure.
But let's get to this point of agreement first. So I think that is important in my life that I've learned. And it wasn't just me, it was those who were in the organisation itself, and learning that in order to lead a group of people, you have to realise that people are different and people will have different opinions. Even those who agree 95% of the time, they will disagree on 5% on what you believe in. But it's focusing on motivating those people on the 95%. And after we are motivated on that, we have come to a place of agreement, we can then discuss the 5%. But it's focusing on leading the collective to the common cause. And that needs to be the goal, that needs to be the mindset. And after we've done that, we can create change.
Yeah.
And after we agree on the change, then we can debate the details.
Yeah. So leadership, it sounds like what you're saying, if I'm paraphrasing, I mean, leadership centers so much around unity. I mean, there's no
Yes.
point in leading if there's no unity at the beginning.
Yes.
You know, and I imagine that a lot of your history there probably informed what you want to do now with the online platform and stuff.
Yes.
Probably you were inspired by what you saw. And was anything that you saw similar to the way that we do it here, or not at all?
Politically?
Or, yeah.
You mean?
Just some of the format that you were talking about.
Well, in regards to politics, American and British politics is so different.
Yeah.
The view of American politics is interesting because it seems to be much more divided. It doesn't seem it very aggressive to a certain extent as well.
Yeah.
But the again, the common cause is the same. The common cause is we love our country. We believe it should be run this way. And whether you think the Democrats are wrong or the Republicans are wrong, I think, from my perspective, they both have the common ground of I think they want what they think is best for the country. Whether they're right or wrong,
Sure.
whether that's the right view of the country or not, I think they all have that common ground that they truly believe that this is the best way to lead. And the unity side in politics in general in the United States, and we've seen it the last few weeks, is we have been so focused on our differences.
Right.
And the Americans, I don't want to speak into Americans too much, but Americans have so much common ground that they're ignoring that, and they're going so much to what we disagree on, and there's nothing on what we agree on. I think it's the same anywhere. I don't think it's just America.
Sure. Yeah.
But in the context of what you were asking, I think in that sense it's the same, but it's also different in the sense that I think I'm very patriotic as a Brit, but I think American patriotism is far more ingrained in your psyche, even from the Revolution.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so ingrained that this land, our way of life, this flag, everything of that is so important for Americans that Brits don't really have that. And I think in that sense it's different, that we don't get so enraged about certain things. And maybe that's our complacency. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But finding the common ground, finding what we believe in, finding what we agree on, that I think is common. Doesn't matter where you are.
Yeah. Did you see anyone who did that in particular that you really admired and looked up to, or was this something that you just noticed was effective in general, or have you seen anyone model that before?
In politics?
Sure, anywhere.
Find anywhere?
Yeah.
Yes, I think so. I think if you look at the and again, you got to look at the more the day-to-day runnings of British politics, which maybe some people in American voices not heard, but I'm going to try and think of an American comparison as well.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in the UK itself, I think it's more the day-to-day running of the local branches that doesn't get the limelight it does in the media. And I think if we talk about the media, I think it's so polarized in the media now that you never actually understand where that common ground is.
Right.
Because common ground is boring for the media.
Right.
There isn't news. It's not news unless there has to be something controversial.
Yeah.
Has to be something that's this person said this, so therefore that person is now evil, or he is now the Antichrist. But I think it was my local leader in the local UKIP branch who would never be known to anybody. Never be known to anybody, and he would run a meeting, and it would be just the details of any organisation. Just it should be run this way, or it should be run this way, and just trying to find that common ground, and just remember that we're not divided against each other. We have so many similarities. We have so many passions that are the same. So in that sense, I would just look at my local leaders that are there doing the boots on the ground.
Yeah.
Those who are not talked about in the media. Those who have any limelight at all.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's the same in the United States. I mean, I've had some sort of conversations with those who are in the local branches of different parties, and they're the same. They're the ones who are, okay, we believe that America is great. We believe that it should be run on this. We believe that the founding fathers set up the establishment of the Constitution. They set all this up.
Yeah.
This is where we agree on, and that is our foundation. So we can now talk about all of the day-to-day runnings. But for me, like I said, leadership is all about trying to work with people, knowing people have their differences, but having that focus on, okay, we all believe in this. And I think that ultimately creates an environment to allow differences to grow.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If we have a common ground, we believe in this, you and I believe in a certain way, okay, now we believe in this, because that has now been set in stone, that's the foundation, we are on solid ground to talk about the differences.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that speaks to unity, but also, I mean, just trust. Because if there's a level that you can agree on, and fundamentally, okay, here is our bedrock, then there is the trust that's established to move on and talk about more difficult subjects that maybe you don't agree on.
Yes, agree.
Yeah, that's good. So a lot of our audience typically is younger members, the next generation of upcoming leaders. Is there any general advice maybe you would give, particularly, because you were younger, you mentioned that you were one of the youngest in your district or whatever it was?
Yeah, in the country.
In the country, okay.
Yeah. One of. I wouldn't say I was but,
yeah.
Being 18, you have to be at least 18 to run. Yeah. So I would have to be one of the youngest.
So what advice would you give to yourself, if you could, in retrospect, at that age, pertaining to leadership, or, I mean, really just in general, like that they could take away, knowing, okay, this is something that I can take to the bank? Yeah.
Well, I think this links into what of the apologetic platform that I'm working on right now. In 1 Peter 3:15, it says that, paraphrase, if Christians are to revere Christ as Lord in their hearts, always be ready to give an answer to everybody who asks you for the hope that you have, but do this in gentleness and respect. So that is a Christian side to it, but if you want more of a secular version of that, you would say, always be ready to give an answer for the political position that you have, but do it in gentleness and respect. I think that in society nowadays, and we can already see it with the riots that were going on in DC a couple weeks ago, is that we have lost the idea of what makes us human nowadays. That question is more of a philosophical question, but what does it mean to be human? How are we treating our fellow human beings? Are we allowing time for them to speak into our lives? Are we allowing our time and what we have? Are we allowing the platform to speak into their lives? Are we doing it with gentleness and respect? And even though we've been talking about unity here, I think that we have sacrificed the platform for differing opinions on the altar of unity, which has created fear and disunity in organizations.
Sure, yeah.
So we are so afraid of talking to people because we do not know how they're going to react to us. We do not know how they're going to respond. So we've avoided that. We've avoided differing opinions. And when you avoid differing opinions, you don't just bury them. They don't just go away. We've already talked about it. Human beings have all of these different opinions. And if you don't allow a platform for people to talk to each other, you create polarization. And then polarization can lead to name calling, it can lead to violence, it can lead to all these different things. And we have not allowed a platform to flourish with gentleness and respect. So for me, my advice, I guess, to a younger version of me and to the next generation of leaders is to don't allow someone, just because they have a different opinion of you, doesn't mean they're the Antichrist. Doesn't mean that they are, the devil incarnate. Doesn't mean that they need to be silenced. They are a human being that deal with the same difficulties and the same issues that we have nowadays. We all have that difficulty. If you go on, why is there so much violence? Why is there so much division in society today? Well, we need to talk about what is going on in our heart, what is going on in our mind first. And as a leader, if we do that, then we are setting ourselves up for, okay, you know what? I have this opinion, but someone else is going to have a different opinion. And let's not sacrifice different opinions because we're so focused on unity. Let's actually have a platform that we can talk to each other. An example, actually, when I was involved in an organization just very recently, the leader of that organization doesn't have the strong ability to talk to people, which is difficult. You have to be able to talk to someone as a leader. And I was volunteering in a certain way and trying to benefit the organization, and whatever I was doing was not particularly his cup of tea, as I would say. It wasn't particularly his cup of coffee. It wasn't his.
We don't drink tea. I'm just kidding.
What I was doing wasn't particularly what he particularly wanted, which is definitely fine.
Sure.
But I was informed that way by somebody else who kind of spoke to me in a way that it was very grey. There was never this is what he wants is what we want or whatever. And in my mind, that was the leader of that organization not sacrificing different opinions on the altar of unity. It was I'm so afraid that if I say this, that unity is going to be gone, which actually I felt more disunited with that organization, with that person, than united if that person actually said, you know what you're doing is great, I love it, but I would prefer if it was this, or we've actually decided to move on with this person because they align with this, or whatever. I would much prefer that. So, but that can only take place if you first created a foundation to allow that to happen. This is what we agree on. This is what we're motivated with. This is what we can all have a common goal. We can all have a common goal with this because this is what we agree on. If you've done that, then you can create. Then you have created the platform where you can have those different opinions and do it with gentleness and respect. So I would always be cautious about that. And I think that's the only way that we're going to grow as a society. And you can only look at the politics nowadays to understand that. Can only be true.
It's not hard to find. It sounds like, if I were to paraphrase, maybe faithful are the wounds of a friend. But kisses from an enemy is to be cautioned against, be careful of that. I'm ruining that quote, but that's the idea.
No, I know what you mean. Yes.
But if you, let's say, you had to, give a couple tweets that were eternal. What are a couple quick nuggets of truth that maybe you would tell your grandkids, or maybe that you've heard from someone who you can tell this is something that's going to last longer than me? What are a couple nuggets like that maybe you've heard before?
Yeah, I think the main one that comes to mind is don't try and remove the speck in your brother's eye before you've removed the plank in your own. And obviously, that's a very famous phrase that comes straight from the Bible. But I think anybody can take that, whether they're a believer or not, whether they call themselves a Christian or they believe in some deity or not. And I think at that point, we actually come to some sort of unity where we are dealing with our failures and dealing with our shortcomings rather than trying to deal with somebody else's shortcomings. Yeah. We can say, well, this person doesn't speak well, this person is a terrible candidate, this person believes in something that's so on the opposite side of me that I cannot even touch that person. Well, have you thought about the way that you talk to people? Have you thought about your position, how that opinion is perceived by someone who doesn't believe the same things as you?
Yeah.
And another phrase or quote or whatever you want to call it is, don't hate your fellow brother. Don't hate your fellow neighbor. And again, it goes straight from the Bible. Is who is my neighbor? Right. Jesus was asked that question. Who is my neighbor? And our neighbor, our fellow man, our fellow human being is you and I, the stranger that you walk past on the street. Hate and division is not a way for any organization, any leadership, any society to flourish. Yeah. So we need to focus on our own shortcomings before we focus on everybody else's shortcomings. And if we all did that, can you imagine if we all did that? Yeah. Then we are in a place where we can actually give grace to these people, because actually I was dealing with that same situation. Right. I was dealing with that as well. Right. Now we've actually have some unity. Okay, let's talk to each other now. Yeah. And if we recognize that, and at the same time don't just hate our fellow person. I mean, we've seen so much hate. Oh, I'm a Democrat, so I hate Republicans. Or I'm a Republican, so I hate Democrats. So I'm a Trump supporter, so I hate Biden. Or I'm a Biden supporter, so I hate Trump. Yeah. Where are we going with this? Where are we going with society? What's next? Yeah. We are focusing so much of, this is why they're bad. No. We need to figure, okay, what is my shortcomings? Why am I the way I am? Where do I need to improve? If we do that and not think about, you have issues. No, we all have issues. Yeah. And if we focus on that area, then we will be able to become better leaders, better human beings, and a better society. Yeah. And you'll be able to impact your organization and your family and your friends in a much better way if we focus on us rather than focusing on everybody else. We don't need to focus on everybody else. We need to focus on us and what we're dealing with. And if they did that, we do that, we can all come to some common ground.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. So last couple questions here regarding your experience or people you've seen in the past or people you've read about. Do you have maybe one or two favorite leaders, and who are they and why are they your favorite leaders?
Okay. So any person that I'm gonna mention is gonna have their shortcomings and their flaws. So the one person that springs to mind, which is controversial in itself, is Margaret Thatcher, who was the first Prime Minister of England. And she came at a time where the UK was in such a dire situation, coming out of the 70s, where we had socialist Britain and income tax was through the roof at around 80%. Can you imagine 80% of your income going straight to tax? I mean, you talk about some of the issues that some governments want to put in. We're not seeing that sort of rate at the moment. But we had nationalisation of the railways and everything was nationalised. The post office, everything was nationalised, and it was just in complete dire straits. Obviously, I wasn't around there. We're talking about 1979 when Margaret Thatcher came in. But one of the first things she did, she went from an 80% tax to a 40% tax overnight. She halved the income tax overnight. She said, we don't want to be spending £4 billion. That was a lot in 79. It's still a lot now, but
$4 billion is a lot.
Well, now we're talking about trillions, which is just ridiculous. Right. But $4 billion in 1979 was around that now. Sure. And she was so adamant. The government does not need to be spending money on this. We don't need to be earning this. We don't have any. We don't make any money. Let's sell it off to the private sector, allow them to sell it off. And she had all of these boring old white men in her cabinet that were so dreary and boring. and didn't stand for anything, and she got rid of them. She got rid of all of them. She got in more younger, bright sparks, I guess she would call them. And she was like, okay, we need to have just a new, fresh face of the country. And she had so much opposition. She had she wanted to close down the mining industry, which, rightly or wrongly, I'm not going to stand on a position there because I wasn't around and many people lost jobs or whatever. But the main part that I get out of that, the reason why I think she was such a good leader, is rightly or wrongly, she believed what she believed. She stood up for her beliefs, and she said, if you don't like it, there's an election coming up and you can vote me out, but you voted me in, so I'm going to do whatever you said I'm going to do, which I think is what we've really, which shocked the left and the Democrats with Donald Trump. When in his 4 years as president, he did a lot. Credit to him, whether you like Donald Trump or not, or like his presidency or whatever, rightly or wrongly, he said, I'm going to do all this, and he did do a lot of what he was going to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's admirable in a leader. And towards the end of Margaret Thatcher's premiership, she did a few things that, weren't too great. And unfortunately, then that kind of put a damper on her end. And she was prime minister for 10 years, 11 years. But then obviously the party kind of pushed her out a little bit because she was going a little bit too far. But again, she stood up for it. Even towards the end, she stood up for that belief. So that would be a leader that I would look up to. And also, I think, as a Brit, and talking about leadership, you can't not talk about Winston Churchill. Not so much of his, which was very important, his stance about the war and against Hitler and what was going on in Europe, but the famous quote, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but he said, do you have enemies? Good. That means you stood up for something once in your life. If you don't have enemies, you probably aren't standing up for much.
Yeah.
I mean, the area that I want to get into, apologetics, defending the Christian faith. The Christian faith is not politically correct in many areas, but it's what I believe in. So I'm going to stand up and say it. Does that mean I'm going to have enemies? Yes. I'm not going to like that. No one likes having enemies. Right. Everyone wants to have that, oh, everybody loves him, everybody, he loves that. But you don't remember them.
Right.
Why do you remember Churchill? Because he did things that people didn't agree with.
Yep.
I'm not talking about the war here. I'm talking about the policies that he put forward. Margaret Thatcher. Why is she known? Why is she? We don't remember the Ted Heaths, who was a prime minister. We don't remember the Gordon Browns. We don't remember these individuals. But we remember the Margaret Thatchers. We remember, and rightly or wrongly, we will remember President Trump.
True. Yep.
We will always remember these 4 years for the good times and the bad times, but we remember these people because they stood up for what they believe in, and whether they are, they believe this specific way, they have this specific religion, have this specific bent. If you're a person who stands up for what you believe in, you will be remembered, and you are going to be standing up for something. It means you will have enemies, but the leaders that I look up to are those who say, I see a problem here. Yep. It may not be very appropriate. It may be not politically correct. Appropriate in the political correct.
Sure.
Not appropriate as it would be crude or offensive. But if it's not politically correct and doesn't hold and doesn't follow the line, but I'm going to stand up for it anyway because this is what I believe in, then that, I think, is an admirable leader. Yeah. But you have to have freedom of speech to allow that to happen, though.
True. This is true. Yeah. Good. Well, just wrapping up, if people want to get a hold of you or find out more about what you do, what's the best way? I'll put all the details below, but what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yes. So I think the details I'll give you in the next, whenever I launch it. But the best way is via email. Okay. If you go to graceandtruthapologetics@gmail.com, which is my first startup email address for that, then you can talk to me that way in regards to whatever thought process you have.
Awesome.
And that's what I want. I want that to be a platform where you can ask questions, feel safe to do so. We're not, and me personally, I'm not going to be the one who's going to be like, well, that's ridiculous. It's idiotic to believe that way. That's not the environment I want. You need to do it in gentleness and respect. If you think, well, I'm struggling in this area, I don't really believe this, I don't know how to believe this, I don't know if this is true, I don't know whether I can truly believe this, or what do you think about this? I want that to be the platform. So Grace and Truth Apologetics at gmail.com is going to be the email address. We can talk about that.
Great.
Be on the lookout for Grace and Truth Apologetics on Facebook and on YouTube. I'm going to be launching all of that. We're going to be focusing on the Christian message and the apologetics message, which is just defending the Christian faith. Apologetics is just a fancy way of saying that it comes from the Greek word apologia, in defense is the English translation of that. Okay. It just means defense. It just means to defend your argument, and I want that to be a place to defend your argument, not just defend my argument, defend your argument, defend the position that you hold, and also learn how to talk to other people. What is the best way to learn to talk to other people? I think one of the best quotes I've heard, and I guess this may be a leadership thing as well. Michael Ramsden, who is a Christian apologist, Christian speaker, he said, and it was very true, the right answer to the wrong question is always wrong. And he said, it's a comedy thing that he talks about, but he says it in a lot of his talks. So when he was younger, he used to come up to individuals, his fellow students, and ask them a question: does your mother know that you're stupid? And you can see what's wrong with the question. If they say yes, they're stupid and the mother knows.
Right.
If they say no, they're stupid but the mother doesn't know. And if they say I don't know, they're too stupid that they don't even understand the question. The right answer to the wrong question is always wrong. So let's say someone comes and talks about, well, I don't believe in God. And this is talking about more my area. It may not pertain to you, but it pertains to what I'm going to be talking about. I don't believe in God. What do you say to that person as a believer? Well, you could give them a great cosmological argument to the existence of God, and how nothing cannot create something, and how you can talk about William Paley, who is a philosopher. You can talk about the watchmaker argument. They're talking about that if a random person came across a watch, would that person conclude, or that watch just must have popped into existence for no reason whatsoever, or if that person examined the watch, he investigated the parts and the details, would they conclude that there was a creator who created the watch? More so the latter than the former. But what if that person is actually, and you may not know it at the time, dealing with suffering? What if they're dealing with a loss of a loved one, and that's why they can't believe in God? Well, your cosmological argument, even though it might be the right answer, it's to the wrong question. So therefore it's always wrong. So asking questions is the first step to answering questions. And as a leader, as someone who wants to create a great platform for everybody to talk about, to try and create a sense of unity, we need to not look at the speck in the brother's eye and actually look at the plank in our own. Not just hate our fellow brother, but actually love them. The best way to do that, which sums up everything that we've talked about, is to ask questions. Because when you ask them a question, you're saying, I value you. I value your opinion. I want to know you more. I want to know what you're dealing with. I care about you. So in that scenario of suffering, you say, why can't you believe in God? Is there anything that you're dealing with that would avoid that belief? At that point, you've opened them up. You've opened a safe environment. You've done it with gentleness and respect. Those are the ways that we can grow as a society, flourish as human beings, and love our fellow brother. And then we can learn to each other. We can create that common ground. And that's how we create a society that will flourish.
Very good. Danny, it was a pleasure to have you on the show.
I love it. It's
always.
Great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hope to do it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that wraps up this episode.
Awesome.